Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Laura Macon-Isherwood, and in this bulletin we'll get you updates on stories developing around the world. But first, let's take a look at the headlines. After weeks of fighting between national resistance forces and the Taliban in the Panjshir Valley, a Taliban spokesperson claims the Taliban has now taken control. The resistance group, though, counters that claim. The Taliban confirms invitations have been extended to some countries for government formation. Sources tell WION the 6 countries the Taliban have reached out to include China, Pakistan, Qatar, Turkey, Iran and Russia. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to Qatar on his first trip since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, with the aim of forming a united front with allies on tackling the Taliban. The German ambassador to China, Jan Hecker, has died, barely 2 weeks into the job. The cause of death is yet to be confirmed. Six Palestinians escaped from a high-security Israeli prison. All 6 were cellmates and tunnelled out of the prison in northern Israel. Topping the FedEx Cup. He's the first player to win 4 or more tournaments in a season since 2016-17. The Taliban claims to have complete control over the Panjshir Valley. Panjshir was the last valley to resist a Taliban takeover. The National Resistance Front has denied claims that they have succumbed. A Taliban spokesperson has said Panjshir province has come under the complete control of the Islamic Emirate, going on to claim some of the insurgents in the province were defeated and the rest fled. The Taliban has also assured the people of Panjshir Sharif that they will not be discriminated against in any way. Addressing a briefing, Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid warned the resistance leaders and said that all those who take up arms in the name of resistance are enemies of Afghanistan.
If anyone takes up arms, takes the name of resistance and riots, without a doubt, he is the enemy of the whole country and our people, because the people do not want the war to continue, and there is no reason for anyone to continue the war. So the people need to know that the Islamic Emirate ended the war. And now we must all work for the prosperity and the preservation of freedom. And in this case, the nation is with us, and we see the happiness of the nation, and we still want the cooperation of our nation.
Countering the Taliban claims, the National Resistance Front said that its soldiers are present at all strategic positions across the valley to continue the fight, and that the struggle against the Taliban will continue. Despite the resistance's claims, the Taliban flag was raised at a market in the city of Bazarak, the capital city of Panjshir, and at the Governor House. These developments come a day after the leader of the National Resistance Front, Ahmad Massoud, said that he is committed to peacefully resolving differences with the Taliban. Massoud said he also welcomed proposals from religious scholars for a negotiated settlement to end the fighting. The Taliban took control of the rest of Afghanistan 3 weeks ago, but Panjshir had been the most prominent example of resistance to the Taliban. Even in the past, the region had resisted control by both the invading Soviet army and by the Taliban government that previously ruled from 1996 to 2001. A spokesperson of Resistance Front in Afghanistan, Fahim Dashti, has been assassinated in Panjshir province. Fahim was the voice of the anti-Taliban group and a prominent media personality during previous governments in Afghanistan. The National Resistance Front also confirmed the death of its main spokesman. Dashti was a senior member of the Jamiat-e-Islami Party and a member of the Federation of Afghan Journalists. He was the nephew of Abdullah, a senior official of the former government who is involved in negotiations with the Taliban on the future of Afghanistan. Panjshir was the only province in Afghanistan that the Taliban failed to take control over during the territorial expansion last month, and the National Resistance Front, led by Ahmad Massoud and Amrullah Saleh, was engaged in heavy fighting with the Taliban in recent days. At the time of his death, Dashti was advising resistance leader Ahmad Massoud on the defence of the valley. Ahmad Shah Massoud and Ahmad Massoud's close aide, General Abdul Wadud, has also been killed in the battle. Fahim Dashti spoke to WION last week when the fighting was in Panjshir and escalating.
In the past 2 days, battles were going on in the two different fronts. Andarab Valley in Khawak High Pass, as well as the mouth of the Panjshir Valley, where Taliban were heavily defeated. They have suffered lots of casualty. Around 350 of them have been killed. More than 280 of them have been wounded, and 35 others have been detained. The forces of the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan are performing very well. We were ready for this kind of circumstances. Of course, we were preferring peace, but Taliban break the war, and now the war is going on in different fronts, and we are ready for that. And we already shown that we are capable to defend our position, but this will not be only to defend Panjshir. This is the first period of war. Later on, the war will be expanded in other fronts.
Back in September 2009, Dashti had survived the suicide attack that killed Massoud's father, Ahmad Shah Massoud, which was just days before the September 11th attacks on the United States. Fahim had been one of the main sources of updates from the valley as the Taliban pressed in on opposition forces. He always issued a defiant series of statements on Twitter, vowing that the resistance would continue. Communication lines in and around the Panjshir Valley have been cut off, and people have been fleeing the valley in search of safe refuge. Our correspondent Anas Malik has travelled to the valley to bring us a ground report on the ongoing situation there. His journey of over 2 hours began from the Kabul border towards the rugged terrain.
The sign that you read behind me, it says "Goodbye Kabul." Beyond this, it's another 100+ kilometers till the valley of Panjshir. To be precise, 102 kilometers. It takes about 2.5 hours from this point to get to the valley of Panjshir.
From Kabul border, Anas Malik travelled to the town of Charikar in Parwan province. The 1.5 hour drive shows the deserted streets with almost no people out on the roads. There were several checkposts with Taliban stationed in them. The entire lane is controlled by the Taliban. This closely guarded city has a significant crossroad. When one road leads to Panjshir, the other one goes to Bagram Air Base.
Where I'm standing, it's in Charikar in Parwan province, en route to Panjshir. To the right, the place that leads to is where the negotiations between the Taliban and the Panjshiri men were taking place. To my left is the way that leads to the Bagram Air Base. The Bagram Air Base that was recently handed over to the Afghan forces and is now being controlled by the Taliban. To the right is Charikar, where negotiations between Panjshiri militia and the Taliban were taking place, which now stand at a pause, and the reason that has led to the resumption in fighting.
Roughly 30 minutes from Charikar and nearly 2 hours from Kabul lies the district of Jabal-e-Sarraj in Parwan province. It is surrounded by the high peaks of mountains and is a historic village of Afghanistan. This place is known for the anti-Soviet war resistance. It houses a famous and unique graveyard known as the Red Army Tanks Graveyard, a brown landscape strewn with decaying tanks and equipment, abandoned by the Soviets back in 1989 at the end of their decade-long failed invasion. This place is famously known as the graveyard of Soviet tanks.
On the highway from Kabul to Panjshir is a place called Jabal-e-Sarraj. It's roughly 2 hours from Kabul. The place is known as the graveyard of Russian tanks. Tanks like these can be found here in abundance. This is the same place that has seen and witnessed immense and intense firing just in the past few days. Both the Panjshiri side and the Taliban have suffered major losses over here. This place is now under the control of the Taliban.
After departing from Jabal-e-Sarraj, we travel towards Shotul, the village which lies at the entrance of Panjshir Valley. The route to this village lies on the banks of Panjshir and Rocky Mountains of the other side. Scores of vehicles with armed Taliban have lined up till the entry gate of the valley. Our reporter got off on the road and talked to some of the Taliban fighters to find out the ground situation.
We are standing in the first district of Panjshir known as Shotul. 24 hours back the enemy was here and we were fighting. And now the enemy has fled.
I have Mujahideen from 34 provinces and we are going to Panjshir. The provincial government is over and we are now going to overlook the operations.
And after weeks of intense battle for the last resistance holdout, Taliban now claim to have taken over the Panjshir Valley.
With the fall of Panjshir, Taliban now control the entire country, the entire 34 provinces within Afghanistan. Zabihullah Mujahid today in a press conference has assured the people of Panjshir that there's nothing to worry about and that they would be working together for the betterment of the people of the region. Anas Malik in Kabul, Afghanistan for WION, World is One.
A week after declaring America's new chapter of engagement with Afghanistan, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is looking to form a united front with allies. On his first trip since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, Blinken is heading to Qatar. Doha acted as a key hub for the massive US airlift of Afghans. It's been a gateway for 55,000 people airlifted out of Afghanistan, which was nearly half of the total evacuated by US-led forces. Now America wants to ensure a continued support for its bid to help evacuate Americans and at-risk Afghans who were left behind in Kabul. During the two-day Qatar trip, Blinken will voice America's deep gratitude to Qatar. He will also meet rescued Afghans as well as US diplomats who have relocated functions from the shuttered embassy in Kabul to Doha. The agenda includes talks on Qatar's efforts alongside Turkey to completely reopen Kabul airport. A senior State Department official has meanwhile filled in that Blinken has no plans to meet the Taliban. The group has made the Gulf Kingdom their diplomatic base from where they negotiated the pull-out deal with the former President Donald Trump's administration. Remember, the US-allied Gulf Arab state emerged as a key intermediary to the Taliban. Doha has hosted the group's political office since 2013 and is also now home to the US mission covering Afghanistan. Later, Blinken will head to Germany and hold a virtual 20-nation ministerial meeting on the crisis alongside German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, while in Germany, the US airbase of Ramstein will also be part of the trip, which is a temporary home for thousands of Afghans moving to the United States. The Taliban have promised that they will keep letting Afghans leave if they want to. It is one of the key issues that US allies expect to discuss in the talks in Germany. Blinken's trip will be overlapping with the Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin, who is also departing for a wider Gulf visit covering Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait. The visit by two top US national security officials comes as the Biden administration still grapples with a messy US withdrawal from Afghanistan. In the aftermath of the Taliban's victory, the United States and the Western countries are in a difficult balancing act. There is a reluctance to recognise the Islamic group while also accepting the reality that they will have to engage with the group to prevent a looming humanitarian crisis in the country. The Western African nation of Guinea has plunged into deeper political instability. A unit of military has seized power, declaring a coup in the region, closing the borders and doing away with the constitution. After hours of unleashing violence in and around the presidential palace, the military detained President Alpha Condé. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the coup and called for Condé's immediate release. The African Union bloc has also condemned the military takeover and called on the body's Peace and Security Council to meet urgently.
Soldiers in Guinea staged an uprising in the capital on Sunday. They claim to have dissolved the constitution and the West African state's government.
La pauvreté, la corruption endémique.
One unidentified soldier, draped in Guinea's national flag, said the group planned to form a transitional government and that further details would be given later. Meanwhile, videos appearing to show the country's president, Alpha Condé, being detained by army special forces circulated on social media. Reuters could not immediately authenticate the footage, but it was posted just hours after heavy gunfire broke out near the presidential palace in Conakry. Several sources have claimed an elite national army unit led by a former French legionnaire, Mamadi Doumbouya, was behind the unrest.
We have decided, after taking the president, who is with us now, to dissolve the current constitution. We also decided to dissolve the government, to close the land and air borders. We call on our brothers in arms to unite in order to respond to the legitimate aspirations of the people of Guinea. We also invite everyone to stay in their bases and continue their usual activities. We will not make the same mistakes as in the past.
Right now, though, it's not immediately clear who holds power. The Guinean Defence Ministry said the attack on the palace by mutinous forces and an attempted insurgency had been put down. Earlier, videos shared on social media showed military vehicles patrolling Conakry's streets. One military source said the only bridge connecting the mainland to the Khartoum neighbourhood, which houses the palace and most government ministries, had been sealed off. That source added that many soldiers, some heavily armed, were also posted around the palace.
Amazon rainforests in Brazil are witnessing the deadly effects of climate change yet again. These drone visuals show massive smoke rising from the Amazon forests. Take a look. An actor and a baker in Moscow are turning bread into canvases to make portraits. A project called Bread Portrait, which gives animated faces to ordinary loaves, came out of lockdown and is now a hit with customers. We'll leave you with this report. Stay tuned to WION World is One.
I just cut out a face on it thinking nothing will come out of it. But when we took it out, it turned out a cool smiling bread face, bread portrait, and so it all started. When they let us move around in Moscow, I remember I was missing everybody, all my friends. So I would put this bread into a string bag and go to my friends and give it to all of them. And they would say that it was delicious, tasty and very cool, with funny faces on the bread.
I'm very surprised how this enforced pandemic turned out to benefit, because it was during this pandemic that this project was born. And it is so cool that Serafima got to draw this portrait one day. Maybe if it were a busy time, she would not have had a chance to do it. It is cool, she is talented.
I love people, so I think somewhere inside me there are many faces sitting, which I saw, which I liked. When I draw the portraits, I never know who am I drawing, but I can think of somebody and the traits of this person might probably appear.
Did you know Bangladesh has 1.34 million diesel irrigation pumps? They consume fuel worth $900 million. Could solar energy be an alternative?